Right guys, so I'm back here on this Tradition Telecaster, as I spoke about in the last video, Tradition guitars out of Texas, you know, the latest I know about them. But in the last video I cleaned the fretboard, I applied some, cleaner and some prep, and I, conditioned the fretboard with some oil, lemon oil. And basically now, in order to determine if this guitar needs any further work, it would be nice to slap on some strings right here, in order to be able to adjust the pickups right, adjust the saddle height, and set the radius to match the fretboard, and basically also to determine, while we are setting the action and adjusting the truss rod, it would be nice to go down here with the strings on, play the guitar a little, and see if this knot is actually suitable for still being on here, because I don't know, as I said, this guitar, I've had it for a long time, and I've had it long before I even started getting into setting up guitars and working on guitars for people. But I've always felt like that, the low E string and some of the middle strings were sitting a little too low. But the way the guitar was set up, when I got it, or whatever it was, it felt nice when I played it. So, and I didn't get that much buzzing out or anything, but I went over it before I took the old strings off, and I could feel somewhere that it had some buzzing that I maybe wasn't aware of before, because I didn't know as much as I do now. But let's pop on some strings and adjust the truss rod and adjust the action, and basically just try and get a clear look of where we're at. And this guitar is going to get some Ernie Ball 10 to 46. So let me just patch the strings through down here, and I can reposition the camera so you can basically see how I how I go about putting the windings on up here. So let me do that, guys, and I'll just be back. Alright guys, so we're in here, and we're going to put strings on the guitar here, and I like to start with the low E string first. Basically, taking it and pulling it somewhat tight in the nut slot, and generally, measuring from, the tuner we're going to put it on here. I'm going to measure 2 tuners up. So right around the tuner for the D string. And with that, I'm basically just going to, take my plier here and just cut it. And it doesn't have to be 100% precise or anything, but it just gives a good measurement to go for. Let me get another plier. But something like that will give you a good measure for putting the strings on and having some nice windings. I like to align the peg head so that I have the hole facing basically parallel to me here, so I can insert the string, and I would basically leave a tiny bit of overhang, and then generally start winding. I like to use one of these winding tools here just to keep everything going a little faster. Then just keep pressure with my hand, and then make sure that every winding down here goes underneath. Basically just hold it nice with some pressure, and just make sure the string's sitting nice. One thing you do not want to do, you do not want to, when the string starts to grab here, you don't want to just put it in the nut slot and tune till it's right there, because it will, if you do that a lot of times, it will wear out your nut slots quickly. So I lift up with my thumb here, and I keep my my index finger up here, basically, you know, causing the string not to ride on the nut slot, at least not till it's too tight that I can't hold it anymore. Then I'm going to release it in the nut slot and just let it, you know, slide a little bit there and continue with the rest of the strings. So if I just do the A string here with you, I do the same thing, put it through the nut slot, somewhat tight. This is the tuner that we're going to use. We're going to measure 2 tuners up. So this right here would be the tuner for the G string. Take your plier again and just cut it. And this is basically quite simple, quite easy. And align the tuner again. Maybe if I could move you in a little closer here, you could get a better idea of what's going on. But nothing really hard about this at all. You just have to make sure that your windings are good and the string's nice and secured. So leave a little bit of overhang, keep the string at some pressure, and you know, just put on the string winder and make sure that every wind goes under so that everything is just sitting nice and tight. And just, you know, keep winding. And if you feel like it, you can always go down and lift a little bit of the windings up, because they tend to just, you know, sit a little loose. But still, I'm still keeping pressure down here so that it doesn't ride in the nut slot until it gets really tight and I can't, you know, hold it up anymore. And this is the case. I will just, you know, sit it right down there. Just let it ride in, so I don't wear out my nut slot too quickly. So basically this is what I would do for the rest of the strings. Make sure that your, you know, string guides here are aligned parallel, so we don't have any crooked or, you know, nastiness going on there. Let me just string up the remaining 4. You get the idea now, guys. For the slight bit of overhang I have here, I like to bend it out of the way here. The string will actually sit up against one side of the entrance hole on the tuner peg, so I like to bend it to the side it's resting against, and it will usually be the left side of the hole, so I just like to bend it a little bit out. And when I take my plier here and I cut it, I basically leave a little bit, maybe yeah, I don't know, a little bit here for, you know, just enough for the string to still be, you know, secured in there. But it's just to, you know, wrapping it around here would also, you know, ensure that you don't poke yourself on these. So cut them off and just twist them to the side so you don't, you know, poke your fingers out with them. I've done that a couple of times and it's not something pleasant. Yeah, let me continue with the remaining 4 guys, and I'll just be back and bring you in at that time. Alright guys, the strings are now on and they are stretched and tuned to pitch. The neck relief hasn't really changed that much. It's about 0.012, so 12,000. And I'm going to leave it with that. But the next thing we're going to take a look at is the string height. And you know, I just took a Telecaster of mine, which I really like the string height on, and the low E is going to be at 2 millimeters, and the high E is going to be at 1.75 millimeters. So I basically want to measure that. I like to measure it at the 17th fret, and basically, you know, trying to see where we're at. And this one right here is actually right on the money. So you can see that the string is just, you know, resting where the 5 1.75 is that. And if I move it over, we can see that the E string is sitting way too low. It's below 1.5 millimeters. So we would basically have to take that up a bit. So I want to take a look at the saddles, and I want to make sure that the saddles are, not tilted or crooked in any way. So I want to make sure that when I go to adjust the saddle down here, that I have the right key. And this is it. And I want to make sure that when I adjust the low E saddle, I want to make sure that it sits somewhat flush. So if I just go in here, give it a quarter of a turn, something like that. I want to sight down here and see if it sits as it should, and I believe it does. I will just check the string action again, and we may have to give it a slight turn, just a little bit. And I'll just check it again. Maybe just a tiny bit more. And this is just, this is a process of going back and forth sometimes, just trying to get it right. But I like where we're at right now. So, I basically like to start by, as I said, I took the specs from an old Telecaster that I like to play. And I like to adjust the low E and the high E, and then from there we're going to match the 4 remaining strings to the radius of, the fretboard on this guitar, in order to have that curvature or match the fretboard, in order to give each string, its right height off of the fretboard and the saddles. So let's just recheck here. .75 there, and right around 2 millimeters there. Okay, so now we just want to take the tuner and just tune the E string to pitch. Okay, we're good there. So now I'm going to take my, radius, understring radius gauge out here, which is basically this one right here, and going to use that to match the radius of the fretboard. And this guitar is a 12-inch radius, so we're going to basically match the bridge to that. So let me see if I can find a better angle for you here, guys, and then I can bring you in so you can get a better view of what we're doing when we're trying to establish the radius. Alright guys, so we basically want to check 3 things when we have the strings on and we're ready to proceed with the setup. And as I said, I want to put on the strings in order to get a feel for what needs to be done furthermore here. So we are going to check the truss rod right now, and the way that Fender recommends that you do this is that you take your K-bow here and you place it on the first fret, and you press down at the very last fret down here on your guitar on the low E string. Press it down, you take a feeler gauge, this one right here, a .010, and you go down to the 8th fret here, and you insert the feeler gauge and you see how much clearance you have, and this feeler gauge should just slide right under, which it does in my case here. So everything is good. You know, you can go over and check the same thing for the Heey, but everything should basically be the same. Yeah, and it seems good. So a nice way to, you know, check the truss rod, because you're taking the nut height out by placing the cable here, and you're taking the bridge height out by, you know, pressing down at the last fret with your finger. So you get an accurate read here. From there, you basically, you know, you want to move on to checking the bridge saddles, and you know, you want to adjust your bridge saddles to the desired height that you like. I like to use this action gauge right here. I like to check at the 17th fret where my action is. And for the low E right now I have 2 millimeters. For the high E I have, let's say, 1.9 millimeters, so close to 2 also. I like to set the 2 outer E strings first, then go get my, you know, my radius gauge here, understring radius gauge. This right here is a 12-inch, and when the 2 outer E strings are adjusted, I would basically take this and place it in between the G and the D string, slide it in under, and pull it up in order to, you know, hear which strings are ringing out, and basically adjust the 4 remaining strings to this you know, radius gauge here. You can also place it at the top here in order that you have set the 2 outer E strings, just to, you know, to, if you want to, you know, by putting it under in between the strings, you might feel they're sitting quite too low now, and it's hard to bend strings without strings slipping on your fingers. You can basically take it and set it on top here, make sure that you're in the middle, and adjust the 4 remaining strings from there too. And I do that quite a lot because it tends to, you know, give the strings a little more room, and it's easier for the fingers to get in here and basically bend strings. Also, when you get down higher here, you need something to, you know, grab onto in order for your fingers not to slip on the strings. So I do that right after I adjust the truss rod. And next thing would be to basically check the nut action up here. And I like to do that by either using feeler gauges or basically just placing a finger at the third fret here and gently tapping at the first fret to see if I have the strings moving over the fret just a tiny bit. And you basically, you don't want much, but you still want the string to kind of, you know, have a little tap when you check this. If your nut slots are too low, your strings will, you know, generally buzz when you play them open. If they do that, try and play the first and second fret on the strings that are buzzing open and see if the buzzing goes away. Then it's because your nut slots are too low. Okay, I can see my camera is running out here, guys. I will come back.